Alright guys, I am back again with another deck profile for Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days on Nintendo Switch. This time we got version 1 of my Brandt Gate Nordlinger deck, aka Gravidia, aka Alien Waifus, if you're into that sort of thing. But anyway, this is version 1 of the deck, so it's everything through the first additional card pass, so through the booster set 7. However, outside of some vanilla triggers, which are just aesthetic, this deck can be played entirely with cards from the base game. So this deck revolves around getting a special kind of set order called Meteorites into your order zone, and then sending those cards from the order zone to the drop in order to gain various abilities. So as always, we will be going through the deck, and then we'll show it off in one card fight. So, starting first with the Ride deck, we of course have our Grade 0 starter, which is Gravidia Delin. So, when it's rolled upon, if you want second, draw a card. Standard D-Series starter, as always. Next up, for the Grade 1, we have Gravidia Wells. So, her auto ability, when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, you look at 7 cards from the top of your deck, choose any number of Meteorite cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So, on paper, this skill is technically potentially a +7 to your hand. Now, realistically, that's not ever going to happen. Most of the time, you end up getting 1 or 2 Meteorites out of this skill. It just depends on how many you end up finding in those top 7 cards. And it is actually possible to whiff with this if you don't find any in the top 7, so you could end up getting nothing out of it. However, it is cost-free, so you don't lose anything, even in that situation. So overall, it is a very good skill, adding potentially several cards to your hand for free. And then she also has her Activate ability that she can use on Rearguard Circle. That says, once per turn, if your Vanguard is Gravidia Nordlinger, you can Soul Blast 1, choose up to 2 Meteorite cards from your hand, put them into your order zone, and this unit gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. So, she never really ends up on Rearguard Circle, and we don't have any more of her in the main deck, so that second skill isn't really used for anything ever. Next, for the Grade 2, we have Gravidia Behringer. So her auto ability says when this unit's placed on Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, if you have a Meteorite in your order zone, you can Soul Blast 3, draw a card, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. And she also has a continuous ability on Rearguard Circle that says if your drop and order zone have a total of 5 or more set orders, this unit gets power plus 5,000. So again, like with Wells, she doesn't really end up on Rearguard Circle, so that second skill, or the on-call portion of our first skill, isn't really ever used. She's just here for the on-ride part of her first skill, which does let you get an extra draw and a little power gain. Now, the cost for this is Soul Blast 3, so the Grade 1 Meteorites in this deck lets you Soul Charge when you play it. So you do want to be sure to play that on turn 1, so you do have the 3 soul to pay the cost for Behringer skill. If you do miss that somehow, you won't be able to use her ability, which you should have pretty good chances of having one of those in your hand, since you have Whale's skill to potentially dig some out as well. So most of the time you should be able to get that 3rd soul with no problem. So then, of course, for our Grade 3, we have Gravidia Nordlinger. So her first auto ability says when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, search your deck for up to 2 Meteorite cards, put them into your order zone, and shuffle your deck. So this is a very powerful skill, very helpful in the deck's consistency, letting you get 2 Meteorites from your deck directly into your order zone. And again, that Grade 1 Meteorite, when it's put into the order zone by your Vanguard's ability, it also lets you draw a card. So not only is this a free +2 to your order zone, it's also potentially a free +2 to your hand and to your soul as well, if you put 2 copies of the Grade 1 Meteorite. So very helpful in getting things into your hand, things into your soul, and things into your order zone where they need to be. And then additionally, she also has her other auto ability that says when this unit attacks, you counterblast one and put one or more meteorites from your order zone into your drop. And until end of that battle, this unit gets power plus 15,000. And if you put 3 or more meteorite cards into your drop for this cost, it gets critical plus 1. And if you put 5 or more, your trigger effects activate twice. So an extremely powerful skill if you send 5 meteorites to your drop zone, potentially letting you activate all your triggers twice that turn. So that means if you check into a critical trigger, you can choose a unit to give a crit, choose a unit to give power, and then again immediately choose a unit to give a crit and choose a unit to give power. So you can stack it, you can spread them out. If you check a front, that's plus 20k to your entire front row. If you check a draw, that's 2 power-ups and 2 draws you get out of that. If you check a heal, then you get 2 power-ups and potentially 2 heals, depending on the damage count at the moment. And then, of course, the big funny play is, of course, if you luck into your over trigger, you do get to give 100 million power twice, and activate the additional effect of the over trigger twice, which, of course, in this deck being Eldo Breath, that means you can double the power and critical of your entire front row 2 times. So that definitely leads to some crazy shenanigans with this deck. Now, since all this is dependent on what triggers you check during her drive checks, it does mean that RNG definitely plays a much bigger role in this deck than it would in most others. Since if you do get unlucky and don't get any triggers, you're not getting a lot out of that. However, even in those situations, you're not totally vanilla, since you still do get the power gain and the crit onto your Vanguard. So your Vanguard should still be swinging for pretty beefy numbers. And of course you will have the threat of potentially checking triggers, so you could potentially scare your opponents into overguarding, especially in that situation since what would normally be a 2 to pass would be becoming 1 to pass. So if they don't have a perfect guard, you can potentially make them drop a lot of cards to block our attack, even if you end up not getting any triggers off of it. And beyond that, all of the Meteorite cards also have a skill that says when they're sent from order zone to drop zone, it lets you choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it as well. So if you send the full 5, you can potentially wipe your opponent's entire board on top of that. So even with bad RNG luck, you still are gaining quite a bit of card advantage by wiping your opponent's board and making your Vanguard pretty threatening as well. So while you're not totally vanilla in those situations, how much mileage you get out of this deck is definitely dependent on your trigger checks for that turn. So that is the ride deck. Moving on to the main deck for the grade 3s. First off, we do have our 3 additional copies of Nordlinger for Persona Ride purposes. SP, of course. And then we have 4 copies of Gravidia Bakubirito. So her auto ability says when this unit's placed on rear guard circle, you can soul blast one to choose a Meteorite card from your drop and put it into your order zone. So again, very useful skill, helping you recycle those Meteorites out of your drop to potentially use them again. Or if you just dropped one early for your ride line or whatever, being able to get it back and still use it for Nordlinger's cost. And then she also has a continuous ability that says during your turn, if your opponent's rear guard was retired this turn, this unit gets power plus 5,000, and if 3 or more were retired, it gets critical plus 1. So again, very helpful skill with this deck. Your rear guard columns usually aren't hitting for huge numbers with this deck, especially if you don't get your multiple trigger checks. So being able to give herself an extra crit and a little extra power is very helpful. And again, those Meteorite skills will be retiring your opponent's rear guards, so as long as your opponent has 3 rear guards out on the board, you should always be able to get the extra crit and power off of that skill. So definitely probably the most threatening rear guard in the deck on her own. So that is all of the grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we have 3 copies of Gravidia Shurigo. So she has an activate ability that says once per turn you can Soul Blast 2 to choose up to 5 Meteorite cards from your drop, return them to your deck, and shuffle it. And if you return 1 or more cards until end of turn, this unit gets power plus 5,000. If you return 3 or more cards, it gets another power plus 5,000. And if you return 5 cards, it gets yet another power plus 5,000. So again, helpful card in recycling your Meteorites, being able to send potentially up to 5 back to your deck while also powering yourself up is very useful. Now this does actually thicken your deck, since it's putting non-triggers back into the deck. It actually makes it less likely for Nordlinger to sack into some triggers. But it can be very vital to get those Meteorites back in order to be able to use your skills again, especially if the game goes long. So very, very good skill overall. So next up we have 2 copies of Gravidia Stanner. So she has a continuous ability that's active on Rearguard Circle or Guardian Circle that says if your drop and order zone have a total of 5 or more set orders, this unit gets power plus 5,000, shield plus 5,000. So she is potentially a 15k attacker and a 10k shield that you can use from your hand or from your intercept. So pretty useful, pretty simple condition to meet, just needing your 5 Meteorites in your drop and or order zone. So pretty helpful card overall. So next we have 1 copy of Gravidia Marut. So her auto ability says when this unit attacks, you can choose up to 1 Meteorite card from your hand, put into your order zone, and if you put a card, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until the end of that battle. So, this skill is sometimes helpful if you have a lot of Meteorites in your hand. Of course, you can only play 1 from your hand once per turn, like normal with orders. So, this can get them into your order zone faster, while also giving yourself a little power gain. If you don't have a lot of Meteorites in your hand, then this skill isn't going to be very helpful. So, this card isn't super vital. I am mostly running it just because I really love her artwork. So if you want to replace this with another copy of something else, or maybe a copy of Combine Rusher, which I'm not running in this deck, but it does work very well with this deck, you can feel free to do so. So then lastly for our grade 2s, we have 4 copies of our first Meteorite set order, which is Falling Hell Hazard. So this card has no cost to play it, but it has a continuous ability that says when you would count the number of Meteorite cards put from your order zone into your drop for the cost of your Vanguard's ability, this card counts as 2 cards. So effectively reducing the cost of Nordlinger's skill, letting this 1 Meteorite count as 2. And then it also has an auto ability that says when this card is put into your drop from the order zone, you bind this card, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, and retire it. So, like I mentioned before, that is the retire skill that you get from all the Meteorite cards. Now this card does bind itself, so that means you won't be able to reuse it. Once you send it from order to drop one time, it's gone, since we don't have any way to get it back from the bind zone. So you can't recycle it with things like Shergo, since it's not in your drop anymore. And this can also potentially affect things like Stanner, which need a certain number of Meteorites in your drop and or order zone. So do keep that in mind as well. So that's all the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we have 3 copies of Gravidia B. So her auto ability says when this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, if your order zone has 3 or more Meteorites, you can counterblast 1, draw a card, choose up to 1 Meteorite card from your hand, and put it into your order zone. So more draw power for the deck beyond the draws that Nordlinger can get by putting the grade 1 Meteorites into your order zone with her skill, which you do need as much draw power as you can get in this deck. This deck can struggle to build a field sometimes, since we have to have so many slots dedicated to our Meteorite orders. You can be lacking in normal units to call in some cases, especially against control decks. So that extra draw is always very appreciated. And it is another option to get an extra Meteorite from your hand into your order zone. So being able to set up your Meteorites faster as well. So very, very good card. So that is actually the only grade 1 normal units we have besides our Sentinels. So we do have 3 copies of Violate Dragon, your standard Perfect Guard. And then of course the 1 copy of the Blitz Order Elementaria Sanctitude, which you can play without paying the cost if your opponent's Vanguard has triple drive. So then our last grade 1 is our other Meteorite set order. So we are running 6 copies of Neatness Meteor Shower. And yes, I did say 6 copies, which we are allowed to do thanks to this card's continuous ability that says you may have up to 16 Neatness Meteor Shower in your deck. So that lets you bypass the normal max of 4 rule. Originally, this card was the only Meteorite, so that skill was very essential in the early days of this deck. But again, this card has no cost to play it, and it has 2 auto abilities, the first of which says when this card is put into the order zone, you may soul charge 1, and if it was put by your Vanguard's ability, you may draw a card. So again, very helpful in building up the soul. We do have quite a bit of soul blast costs in this deck, so that soul charge helps quite a bit. And of course the extra draw when you place it off a Nordlinger skill as well. Which, do note, both the soul charge and the draw are optional, so if it's late game and you're about to deck out, which is very much a possibility with this deck, you can choose not to do either one of those. And then of course it has its other auto ability that says when this card is put into your drop from the order zone, you choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So again, same retire skill as the grade 2 Meteorite, except this one doesn't bind itself, so even better. So that's all the grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, we do just have our trigger lineup, which is 6 crit, 2 front, 3 draw, 4 heal, and 1 over. So starting first with the crit triggers, we have 4 copies of Star Aggression Dragon. So just your vanilla crit. Additionally, we have 2 copies of Cardinal Draco Barbazonde. So again, vanilla crits. You can run the effect one if you want to, but it's not really necessary. We usually have more than enough soul charging power just from Neatness Meteor Shower. So it's not vital, but you can always run it if you want to. Next for the fronts, we have 2 copies of Cardinal Draco in Pyro. So of course your front with a skill, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, gets shield plus 5,000. So your 20k shield front trigger. Next for the draws, we have 3 copies of Ameliorate Connector. So draw with a skill, same as the front, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, gets shield plus 5,000. So your 10k shield draw trigger. And then for the heals, we have 4 copies of Alterate Sphere Dragon. So it is just the vanilla heal. Of course, you can use any of the effect heals if you so choose. And then lastly, we have our over trigger, which is Star Dragon Deity of Infinitude, Eldo Breath. So of course, this additional effect, double the power and critical of all of your front row units until end of turn. And again, like I mentioned before, you can do very hilarious things with this card and Nordlinger's trigger doubling ability. Which I think the funniest thing you can do is if you happen to check into a crit trigger first and give both of those crits to your Vanguard, and then you check into your over trigger on your second check, you can double the power and critical of your entire front row twice, and you give the 100 million twice. So if you give all that to your Vanguard, you can end up with a Vanguard that has like 600 million power and 16 critical, which is completely ridiculous overkill, but it is pretty funny when that happens. Of course, the smarter play, or, you know, if they perfect guard your Vanguard or whatever, is to spread that power gain out and potentially giving you 2 rear guards that have at least 200 million plus power and at least 4 critical. So that can definitely put your opponent into a position where there's just nothing they can do unless they got like 3 perfect guards in their hand, since this is, of course, only a 3 attack deck. So a card that's already ridiculous on a normal day, made even more ridiculous by this deck in particular. So that is the deck. So we will go ahead and have our one fight with it. And let's see, we'll face Haru, I guess. And we will be going second. And we open with our over trigger, unfortunately. Oh well. Alright, so let's discard one of these Shurgos to ride Wells. And I think I'll use Wells' skill first to check the top 7. And we found 3 Meteorites, actually. So we get to add 3 cards to our hand. And then we can use Dylan's skill to draw again. So now we want to go ahead and play one of these Neatness Meteor Showers. And use its skill to soul charge one. So we will have enough soul for Behringer's skill next turn. And I think we are good, so we will go ahead and attack. Yeah, we get a front trigger, which is wasted, unfortunately, since we don't have any rear guards out at the moment. She gets a draw trigger. And she is rushing right off the bat, so she's got a full field on turn 2. Alright, so let's let that one through. And we'll let that one through too. And I think I'm actually going to let that through as well. Oh, we got a heal. Nice. So we will heal 1. Alright, so let's discard. And we'll drop one of these Meteorites to ride Behringer. And then Behringer's skill lets us Soul Blast 3. And we gain 5k and draw. So we'll go ahead and play Falling Hell Hazard from our hand to get that set up for later. And then we'll call Meteorite from our hand as well. And then I think we're ready to attack. So we'll attack with the Vanguard first. And we get another heal trigger, which we also get. So we will heal 1 and give that power to Meteorite. She gets a draw trigger. Alright, so now we can attack with Meteorite and use her skill to place a Meteorite from our hand and give her 5k. And then, of course, Neatness lets us soul charge again. Which the lore for the Gravidia units is actually really cool. They can actually control gravity and cause meteorites to rain from the sky. So that's where the whole meteorite thing comes from. So let's see, I think I'll guard this one. And we'll let that one through. And she gets a heal trigger, which she does get. And we get another heal, which we don't get, but we do get the power. And I think I'll just let that one through too. And we get a draw trigger, nice. Alright, so we will discard one of these Bushiroads to ride Nordlinger. And then we can use her skill to add 2 of our Meteorites from our deck to our order zone. So we'll add these 2 to get the draws. So we will soul charge and draw. And I think I'm actually not going to soul charge on that one, but I will draw. Alright, so now we can call Bushiroad. Use her skill. Soul Blast one. And add 1 from our drop to our order zone, so we'll add that Falling Hell Hazard that we just Soul Blasted out. So then, let's see, we will go ahead and call a bee over here. Use her skill to Counter Blast and draw. And I'm actually not going to place that order right now because I'm going to wait and do it with my root skill. So she'll get the extra power gain. But I think we are good to go. So we will go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first. And we'll use Nordlinger's ability to Counter Blast. And we're going to send 5 Meteorites to our drop. So let's see, Hell Hazard will be 2, 3, 4, 5. So she gains 15k, she gains a crit. All of our triggers will activate twice this turn. And now we get to resolve all our Meteorite skills and start picking off our rear guards. So Hell Hazard binds itself, and we can retire 1. Which gives Bushiroad plus 5k. So then neatness lets us retire another. And another. Which gives Bakubirito her crit. And then we can retire one last time with our last neatness. And we got a crit trigger. Alright. So we get to activate that twice, so we're going to give the crit to our Vanguard and the power to Bakubirito. And now we can get our trigger effects again, so we give another crit to our Vanguard and the power to Bakubirito again. So that means this attack's going to hit for 4 crits, so we could actually finish her off here. If she doesn't get a heal or an over or anything. She gets a crit trigger, but that's not going to save her. One more. And she got nothing, so we got her with that one. So there you go. That shows the potential for this deck to win very early if you sack your triggers very soon. So that was my Nordlinger deck. I will be back soon with more deck profiles. Next up, I actually have 2 different variants of Zorga that we're going to be doing. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.